Thank you so much for the introduction. Hi everyone, my name is Charisma and I'm from DSAU 7, and today I would like to go over the utilization of the spatial calculations in Tableau. So for this demonstration, I'll be using Tableau Desktop 2021.1, and the data set that I'll be using is fairly simple. I'll show you that now. So as you can see, I only have two columns. The first one is point of interest, and the second one is my location, and it is the latitude and the longitude separated by a comma. So fairly simple. You can either copy mine or you can use your own of the points or the places that you would like to visit close to your house or in your city, and just get that from either Google, or you can use a Google API as well to get all of the data together if you have quite a lot of places you want to visit. So yeah, that's the data, and as you can see, very simple. And now all we need to do is actually connect to the data in Tableau. I'll show you what we're aiming for before we go ahead and build the dashboard. So this is kind of what we're aiming for. We're looking for a map that could show us all our places of interest and also have a buffer around a starting point. This could be either your house or your place of work. As you'll see, mine is actually the data school office. So all these points are around the office, and basically what I want to know is all these places that are of interest to me, which ones I can easily go visit after work or maybe during lunch. So we can change the distance from my place of work in kilometers over here, and it will make it bigger and also highlight all the ones that are actually inside that buffer area. I also have a starting location that I can change with a parameter. I'll show you guys how to do all of this in the next 20 minutes or so. So yeah, let's jump into a brand new workbook, and I'll show you step by step from the beginning to the end how to create this dashboard. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is we actually have to connect to the data. You'll see that mine is in an Excel format. Yours could be in whatever format. Tableau accepts loads of file types. For me, the easiest is the Excel or a CSV. So I'm just going to click on that data source and let's open it in Tableau. Now, you'll see it will import both of my columns. The first one, the point of interest, and the location for each of those. And we'll see that the longitudes and latitudes are combined, separated by a comma, just like I showed you before. So what we actually want to do is we want to split these out. So we can go to this drop-down menu and select split. Now you'll see that Tableau is very clever. It already knows that it needs to split on the comma. If yours didn't work, which it should, but if it didn't, you can always go to the drop-down menu and select custom split and just enter your separator in there. But Tableau is very clever, so the split is quite easy. The next thing we'll have to do is just rename the columns so that we don't get confused. So I'll call this lat, short for latitude, and long. And the next thing we notice that our data is not in the correct format, so we need to change this from a string to a latitude and longitude type. So if we click on that and you go to geographic role, it doesn't actually give you the option to make it a longitude or latitude yet. But if you go over to a number decimal for both of them, and we go in there again, it will actually give you the option to change it to a latitude and to a longitude. So now that we've done that, we can actually go into our first sheet. So what we need to do now is actually create the points for each of the points of interest. So that's where our first calculation comes in. So just go to the drop-down menu and select Create Calculated Field, and this box will pop up. On the right over here, you can see a kind of like a information box. So it gives you all of the calculations with a description of what it does. Now, if that box didn't pop up for you, it's probably you just need to click on this little arrow. So that will pop up. And now we can go to the drop-down menu that says All, and we can select Spatial. There's 4 calculations listed here. The first one we're actually going to use is Make Point. Now, like I mentioned before, it will actually give you a description of what that calculation does, and then also give you an example of how you can use it. So I'm going to double click on it, and it should pop up in the window over here, and it will also give you suggestions of how to use the calculation correctly. So we can't insert strings at all, it has to be numbers, or it needs to be a latitude and a longitude, so that's exactly what we're going to do. So you can either start typing latitude and it will pop up and you can pick it, or you can actually drag it from there into your field. So Tableau made it quite easy. The next thing we'll do is we'll rename this to point of interest. So POI. And we click OK. Now that POI is created, we can actually drag it onto the canvas. And it should show all the points on the map that we needed. The next step is we need to create a starting point. So this could either be your house or your office. It could be your grandma's house, whatever you need, wherever you need to start your journey. I'm going to start at the data school office. So we're going to use the same calculation, create a calculated field, and we'll go to Spatial again, and we'll select Make Point. And now I'm actually just going to insert the latitude and longitude for my office. Calculation is valid, and we'll click OK. Actually, sorry about that. We have to rename it as well. Otherwise, we will get confused which calculation is which. I'm just going to call it my starting point. Great. Click OK. And drag it onto the layer. You'll see that add a marks layer, just drag it onto that. It is there, you can't see it because it's the same color, so we'll actually just quickly change the color to like a red. Okay, now we can see that's my office, and here's all the points of interest. The next step is to create the lines between your POI and your starting point. So we'll go in and we'll create another calculated field, go over to Spatial, and this time we're going to select Make Line. So this one returns a line constructed from 2 points. So we'll double click on that, and it will say your starting point should go first and then your end point. So where we're going to start is the point that you selected. We'll drag that in. We need to give a comma and now insert the end point, which is the POI. It says the calculation is valid and we can click OK. Once again, I forgot to rename. So we'll go Edit and we'll just name this line. Great. Now we can also add that onto the map on the next layer, and you'll see all the lines pop up. Now, if you hover over the line, it will actually highlight all of them at the same time. So what we need to fix that is you can add this point of interest to detail, and now only one line will highlight, and it will also give you the point that you're actually going to. And that's the same with the others. If you highlight these points, all of them will highlight. So click on POI over here, and we'll drag point of interest onto detail as well. So you can hover only on one at a time. So that's pretty easy. Now we have the first 3 layers on top of our map. And the best thing to do right now is actually to scramble these into the positions that you want it to be. So the line, I think, should be at the back. So I'm just going to pop that at the bottom. And we have POI second, and we have starting point at the top. So now we can actually see our starting point again. We can also use different mark types for these. So if we go from the automatic drop-down menu on the starting point, we can actually select shape, and we can change this to any shape you want. I'll click the diamond, and we'll see that it actually became a diamond. You can also change the size, you can change the color, we can make it purple or yellow, and the same with the rest. So we can make this one also a shape, and we can make it a star, for example. Change that a bit and change the color to yellow. Let's actually make this one a different color. Make it green. There we go. Now we know where we're starting, where we're ending. Okay, the line, we can also change that color. We can make it gray, and we can also change the opacity, which would make it a little bit lighter and a little bit see-through, so you can actually see the map on the hindsight of it all. Okay, that looks a little bit better. So now that we have all the marks and the locations and the lines, we actually don't know how far all of these points are to our starting point. So let's go create a calculation, and we'll go over to Spatial again, and we'll select distance. Now this one will return the distance between 2 points. That's exactly what we want to know. Same as before, we'll put the starting point in, we'll put a comma, and our ending point. You'll see that it says the calculation is not valid because here we actually need to specify the units. I'm going to go with kilometers. You can go with meters, you can go with centimeters, whatever floats your boat. Kilometers is just a little bit more standard, so I'll go with that, and we'll rename this one distance. Okay, now we can drag this one onto the line. So in the line box, we can drag it onto detail. And now if you hover over it, it should actually tell you the distance between your starting point and your point of interest for each of them. So that's pretty cool. Okay. The next thing we want to do is to create that bubble that you've seen before. So that's called a buffer. So you can also create that in a calculated field. Go over to Spatial, and this time we're going to create this buffer. So this one returns a buffer of the given distance around a point. If we double click that, it tells us that you need to give geometry, a number, and then the units. So over here, we can see that you need to give it a point, then a number, and then the distance unit. So we'll do exactly that. We want to do a buffer around our starting point, comma, and then the number we actually want to create a parameter for because we want to change that number. So while you're in this window, you can also go to create parameter, and we'll call this distance willing to travel. And we'll select it as a float. You can leave it a float, you can make it an integer. We'll leave it on all so you can type in how far you're willing to travel, and that's it. Now we can drag this parameter into our view as well as our number, and the units need to be the same as the distance. Let's just keep it constant or consistent, and we'll make it kilometers as well. We'll rename this one trade area, and we'll click OK. Now if we drag this one over, you'll see that it makes a tiny little circle over there. We can go to the drop down menu here and we can say show parameter. Now we can make that 5 and the circle should enlarge. Okay, now it's a little bit on top of everything, so I'm gonna drag it to the bottom and I'm going to change the color to a blue with a opacity of 25. Now it's nice light blue. Now the next thing that we want to do maybe now is to format the map. You can do this at any stage. I just thought of it now, so I'll quickly edit the map. So you just go up here, map, and we can start with background maps. I like dark. You can set it to anything you want. I kind of like the dark map. We'll also go to map and we'll select layers because I want a little bit more detail onto my map. Let's add the terrain, the coastline, maybe put in some streets. We can put in some country borders. The more detail you add to your map, the better it will look. Now we can actually see the zip codes as well, and we'll put in city. Great. Now we have a very detailed map. We know exactly where we are and where we're going. Now the next thing that we want is we actually want to know which of these points are within our bubble and which are not. Now I know it's easy to say, oh, but you can just check. But how nice would it be if those points are highlighted instead? So we can exit that and create another calculated field. And this time we'll call it is within buffer. And this time we only want we basically want a true or false. So if the point is within the buffer, we want it to be a different color than points that are not in the buffer. So we'll create a calculation that uses that distance. And if this distance is smaller or equal to the parameter, because the bubble will always change, then true, else false. So you don't have to type true or false or anything. Tableau knows exactly what you mean already. So we'll just click OK, and we'll drag that onto the color of the line. And you'll see here it created a color. It's not very pretty, but we'll change that shortly. And then also on the POI, we'll drag the same calculation onto color. Now we can see that all the points that are within the bubble are orange and all the ones that are not are blue. And if we change this to 2 kilometers, only the ones within the bubble is highlighted. So it works. The next thing I'll do is just change the colors a bit. We can double click, for example, and make it gray, or we can make these, I like this orange color. Perfect. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is actually the starting point that we created. Maybe we're not always going to start at the same point. So let's make that a parameter so we can change where we start. So we'll go to the drop-down menu and say create parameter, and we'll call this the starting latitude. We'll leave everything as it is because we want it to be a float. And we'll do another one and say starting longitude. Okay, and now we can go to the point that we made, our starting point, and we'll edit that one. And we can copy this first one onto our latitude and say that's the current value. And we can copy that one onto our longitude over there. That's just where it's gonna basically start. And instead of this now, we're actually going to drag in the latitude, comma, longitude. And we'll click OK. Now we can also show these, and you'll see they'll pop up here on the side. So you can actually now go and change this. So let's say my new starting point is in North Sydney. Everything will just shift a bit. We can zoom in. So right now I'm going to start there. If we go back to where it was, I believe it was 6, we're again back where we started. So that would just give the user a little bit more free roam of where they're starting. Okay, now we got the basics down. The next thing we want to do is also create a list of places. So let's quickly go through that. I see I don't have a lot of time left. So first what we'll need to do is create another calculated field, and we'll call this number of records. Tableau used to come with this already embedded, but lately it doesn't. So we have number of records, and I'm actually going to drag that onto columns. And I'm going to edit this axis and fix it at 1. Then I am going to drag in my points of interest onto rows, and we can set this to entire view. We also need to color my bars based on whether they are inside or outside of the buffer. So we'll drag that onto the color, and we will also put in the distance on label, and let's sort this, sort by field, distance, and sum, and we'll do it ascending because we want the closest point to be the top one. Okay. Now we can also drag a point of interest onto the label, and we can go and edit the label so that they are actually next to each other instead. And we can put in a few things to make it nice and simple. And we can also put it in the middle, and then we can get rid of that. Great. We can also hide this part down here, and now that's basically our list. Great, so that is basically it. Now we just have to go and create the dashboard. Pretty easy, you just drag in the fields that you want and you do a little bit of formatting and you should end up exactly with this, where you can change your longitude and latitudes, you'll change your distance that you are willing to travel over there, and you can also include a few dashboard actions to highlight the places that you are hovering over, and this will tell you exactly which is the closest places to you and if they are within your willingness to travel. So yeah, that's basically it. That is my interactive dashboard using the spatial calculated fields of Tableau in version 2021.1. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope it will be useful to you guys as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys again soon.